Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Britballin. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my lovely angel of the north, Adam Wilkin, in what looks like a discotheque rave. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I've set up some LED lights in this room, so yeah, they're on in the background.
Looks a bit tricky. I'll be honest with you. I feel like
it's not, mate. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I showed you that side there. Unbelievable. But anyways, my little Manchester Bee, how's things going?
As always, buzzing, mate. Absolutely buzzing.
Buzzing.
No longer a Manchester Bee, as you can tell from almost looking like Zoom background.
Still in the
this
kitchen,
is a real kitchen. It's still in the kitchen.
Still in the kitchen.
It's just, I feel like it actually just looks like one of those fake Zoom backgrounds. Just can't move too much. So 1 week closer. I feel like some level of lockdown has been lifted. I was at the driving range today, practicing my shoddy golf skills, slicing everything to the right, but it was good to be out.
So the first thing you've done after Boris has said, right, when you can go and play out now, you've gone to the driving range.
And hit balls very badly. Yeah, that's what I did. That's what I did.
Unbelievable.
Unless my boss is watching, then I definitely didn't play that. At lunch.
Someone tag Mike's boss in, yeah, quick.
No, so it's did you do anything different today? Anything up to, or did you just do the same old? Well, you're on.
Yeah, I've done something that I've never done before.
Worked.
Yeah, put some graft in, put these LED lights up. That's all that did.
Got me on
hours. Should we get to the main part of the show now instead of me talking about LED lights? Because hopefully I'm tripping some people out with it now, anyways.
Yeah. So obviously tonight's show is going to be about analytics. So we are going to bring in some of the best in the world when it comes to this kind of stuff. And when we say the best in the world, we mean the best in the world. So let's start with introduce Rich. Rich, pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having me. I should have brought more LEDs to the game. I got like one behind me, but not nearly.
There we go. See, Rich, I'll send you some LEDs. I've got loads, mate. I've got some in front of us, the white ones. I've got multicolour behind us. I've got multicoloured along the top there. Loads. I'll send you some.
I need swag as well. These are the hoodie jackets with
EP Sports. Come on, hook them up. Hook them up. We'll send you some. There we go. Done.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So, how's things going on your end? Are you ready for? I know we spoke pre-show, but you're into the season now.
We're in the spring practice. So Division 1, you get 15 practices in full pads. So we've done 10 of them. We have 5 more over the next 2 weeks, and then we move on to summer lifting and all that good stuff. So yeah, we're coaching right now. It's fun.
And for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm sure everyone does, what's your role and where do you coach? Because otherwise you're just a bloke talking about spring practice.
Random guy. So Rich Wursel, the Director of Football Research and Analytics at the University of Akron.
So that's when we say it's the best in the world. We got Rich on the show. We couldn't do a show about analytics without Rich being on. And then to bring the tone down a bit, Pete, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Pleasure to be here, gentlemen. It makes a nice change to be answering some questions instead of asking them.
Not hosting us tonight.
Also, added bonus is I don't have to wear my BAFCA t-shirt.
Yeah.
Because I'm really pleased that I actually still managed to fit into my coaching polo after a year and a half.
I've not even tried mine. Not even tried them.
So you go on. Actually, tell us about what you actually do.
Yeah, so as well as coach football, I actually work for a living. So I'm a lecturer in sports coaching and performance analysis. So that's why I get to be here tonight.
Fair enough. Sounds good. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Oh, just go on. Let him do it. Where do you lecture? Where do you lecture?
I lecture at Edinburgh Napier University, one of Scotland's best modern universities, and ranks number 1 for graduate employability, and home of the Edinburgh Napier Knights.
Well done. There we go. And it's the second best university in Edinburgh. So thanks for coming on, Pete. I had to get that in. I'm sorry.
Not for football.
You know what it is? I don't think so. Next one up, we're going to bring Will into the stream. We're leaving Jamie to last because he joined with last. Hi, Will.
Guys, all right?
How's it going?
It's good to be here.
It's good to be. I'm glad, mate. I'm glad. Otherwise, I'd be devastated if you come on. You were just raging constantly.
To be completely honest, just nice to look at another face other than my flatmates at the end of this year.
I'm sorry, it's mine, mate, but never mind.
Everybody's pretty these days.
So, do you want to give us a bit of background on you, Will, where you're at? And
yeah, so I'm the the offensive coordinator for Hertfordshire Cheetahs Senior, and the head coach for our under-19s. And then day job wise, I do I run a software department for a company called Aries, who do analytics for construction projects over like $1 billion. So, maths. I spend most of my days doing maths.
Now, we were talking beforehand. You showed us a bit of software that we're going to get into a bit later on, but we'll pull that up in a bit. And I'm pretty impressed. I'm still looking through it now. I'm moved by it.
There's some other stuff that goes on top of that I didn't want to go into too much here, not to give away all of our secrets, but this combined with the software that predicts people's play calls. If ever you've watched any of our games, there are moments when dudes just seem to be 15 to 20 yards open with nobody around. Analytics can produce some really cool results, assuming our quarterbacks make the right read at the right time.
You can send me that bit as well later if you want, mate.
and then last but not very much least, Jamos, back for a second night of punishment. How are we doing?
Well, I could be better. Could have been brought on first like last night. Never mind.
You turned up last. What did you expect? You were here last.
Well, aye, there's that.
Well, I love it. I love it.
For anybody who weirdly would have missed last night's show and didn't follow, introduce yourself. What's your name? Where do you come from? Are you single? The usual.
I love how you put your single comment in now after yesterday, by the way, Mike.
Yeah, well, there we go.
I know you might want to ask. Morgs will be watching right now. So I'm Jamie McLaughlin. I am the East Kilbride Pirates head coach, receivers coach for the GB Adult Men's Programme, and we all kind of give our jobs, right? So I guess I'm head of data and AI at a company called Optiseller. So we're all giving our jobs. It's easy for Rich though. Like his job is his football thing. Like the rest of us have like separate things going on here. And also, I wore my data t-shirt for today. Seeing as once again, I want to just point out that I haven't got any merch from the.
Oh, EP, come on, send the merch out.
It's questionable. Harry's not on to defend himself, so I can slag him all the way.
That's fair enough.
Someone tag Harry in the comments. Get him in here.
For anyone who doesn't know, we are sponsored by EP Sports. There is other providers out there, but they're not worth looking at. So just go to EP Sports for anything good.
So if you just keep typing things in the discount box, you'll get one of the codes soon enough. There's that many out there now.
Yeah, I think we've actually got our own. But I tell you what, let's get on to the reason why they go around the bottom. Let's get to the reason why we're all here tonight. As you can see from the guests we've got on tonight, I think we're going to be definitely talking about data and analytics, and we can really see how that's absolutely taken over the NFL. We see it in terms of the hires, in terms of the way people look at the game, the way we break things down. 4th and down, we had the coach that never punts on a couple of weeks ago, which kind of sparked the show, which was Coach Kevin Kelly, who is kind of revolutionised in terms of, from what I was seeing, the way he looks at the game. So, everything in his game is based on data and stats. So I'd be interested to hear from you guys. What do you guys have at the base level? We'll go around each one by one. What do you have at the minute currently implemented? And Rich, I'm going to save you to last. Because I'm sure whatever else they say, you'll have something else. But what do you guys currently use on a day-to-day basis? Will be the first thing we'll touch on. So I'll go over to Pete first. What do you guys use at Edinburgh? And
so we're Huddle users. we're quite fortunate in that we have the silver package, so it gives us a little bit more space in terms of stuff that we can store. We've got the added playbook tools added on there as well, and we've also had that expanded down into our youth setup as well. So our kids are getting used to Huddle as they come through the youth team and the junior team. So by the time they reach university, they should be very familiar with Huddle.
Yeah, brilliant. And J-Moss, do you guys do anything different on top of that?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got not dissimilar to what Pete was talking about. We use Huddle as well. We use that for capturing information, which is not dissimilar to what Will's doing. And going to get into a little bit later on, and then from there, if you can, I'm going to be definitely the negative guy on this, but if you can make sure and get all your data in and get it in properly, then you can start to pull out some pretty cool stuff, both for player development, but also for prediction.
Yeah, brilliant. And Will, obviously, we've touched on what you're doing a couple of times, and we'll share that in a bit. But just talk us through briefly what you're doing and how that helps you.
So, firstly, we're using Quick Cut this year for the first time, which should be interesting, having just moved away from Huddle. And then we've got a decent chunk of custom software for players and coaches to use, which we're progressively rolling out a large chunk of this year. A good chunk of it is targeted at players as well, in terms of just getting them to be able to engage with used to being able to interact with information in this manner. One of the things that I personally have found is, unfortunately, not everybody is all that comfortable just looking at volume data, spreadsheets of just tags and play calls. One of the things we've really focused on is how can we make that information something that everybody can engage with. So custom software, Quick Cut, and a healthy chunk of Excel. And film is where it all comes from.
I can't deal with Excel, me. I'm the type of guy that just.
You get rid of you now if you want. If you don't like Excel.
No, it's not. It's just Excel. Like, I will happily take down any data you want. I will collect it any way possible, and I will give it to someone else to put it in Excel because I cannot work that thing to save my life.
I mean, I don't know a lot about data analysis, but the one thing I do know, if you can't use Excel, you're going to be struggling on that front.
Yeah. I mean, if you're willing to do the actual tagging of the film, that's the dirtiest job.
Oh, yeah. I will do that all day. All day I'll sit and do that. But I will not sit on Excel and type a star when it's meant to be an ad or something like that, and I can't do it.
Nah, you don't do any of that in Excel. That's a massive time sink.
I can't deal with it.
Excel just moves it one place to the other.
No.
Yeah, I just wanted to about Python then or anything like that.
Yeah. Use Python or R or Power BI is like, you know.
Oh, one of them, yeah.
I'll tell you
right, I use this crap bit of software. It's called pen and paper. Right? And that's where I'm at because I can't like.
Should we remove Adam's
got
some class 5 bar gates he wants to show us later on.
Yeah.
I can't.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. Anyway, so he's gone. He's gone now. Don't worry about that. Rich, tell us about what you do.
Well, I used Huddle for pretty much most of my career before I came here. Here we're really fortunate. We have a system called DV Sport. So we host a server on campus. So I mean, we then take old film off of it, but it's an 80 terabyte server that's dedicated for us. All the coaches have access through software, and then we have a cloud-based version so we can push video and stuff to all our kids, our players. We can send them cut-ups and different things. But the great thing about it is essentially it's just a giant database of video and data, and that's half the battle. So we have that, and then obviously Microsoft products, Access, Excel, and then mess around with R once in a while. But for the most part, we don't really need it day to day for what we're doing.
Big thumbs up from Jamie there.
Did you just say day to day you don't need Excel?
Day to day we do. Every day I need Excel.
I was going to say.
Oh my god.
What?
Rich, you meant to be coming in at like the pinnacle, right? And then you come in with Excel. What is this?
Right, I'm sorry, okay? But for me, Excel, it's school. I just had some guy shouting at me saying, type this numbers in and it'll give you that number there. And now I have no idea what it is. I know what I want to. Right, we'll get onto this later on, but I know the things that I want to capture. But the rest of it, I don't know how to get it from box to box.
After the show, I'll give you a YouTube link. It's called Excel for Dummies. You go through that, and then we can do the show again with you in it if you want.
No, I've removed Excel off the computer. I don't even want it. I refuse to have it.
So I mean, at least we've got all ends of the spectrum here, guys. So in terms of the data side of things, obviously it starts with film, doesn't it? So I think one of the things we can see as a thing here is capturing the footage. Are we doing that any different, or is this all just off the normal standard view, or is it just, how are we capturing that footage? Is it just standard, or are you using it in training? Pete?
Yeah, so I mean, if I sort of take a step back first, the reason we want any type of performance analysis, whether it's video or statistical analysis, is because basically we've all got fallible memories. If you think about it, performance analysis comes from eyewitness recollection and spotting crimes. Like, I remember a boy stealing a motorbike right in front of me, and I couldn't identify him about a day later to the policeman. So as coaches on the sideline with emotions and stuff going on, you've got no chance of trying to sort of interpret what's happening on the field. And you take all of those biases with you when you go and watch the game afterwards. So you need that neutral view of the film and the statistics from the film to be able to actually make some good decisions and neutral decisions about what you're seeing. So that's why film's really crucial. And I'm sure the Britballers here can all tell stories about horrific footage that's been shared. I remember getting one set of footage from a team that had just put a GoPro on an assistant referee in the middle of the game, and the footage just went around like this. And I had to try and analyse that and determine what happened in the last game. So we always talk about, if you can get film, get it high. You can get two angles, to get from the sideline behind the goalposts, and then you get that two-view analysis that I know Jamie loves. And from that, then you can actually sit down afterwards on the Monday, watch the film, and then actually start inputting some of the data from what's actually happened. But getting the camera,
make sure you're all done before Monday night.
But even some of the camera footage doesn't need to be expensive. Getting height can be clambering on top of a tree. Wouldn't recommend it. A camera stuck up a pole. Our friend Russ
on a stick. Yep.
Yeah, he's got methods in which you can get your camera up high so you can get a good view of the field. And and if it's raining, put a Tesco bag over your camera.
The Tesco bag.
Yeah, put a hole for the lens, obviously.
Obviously,
see, you lost me there. I was just thinking that all you're going to see is Tesco backwards on this film throughout the whole thing.
What did it matter? You'd be writing your data on pens and pieces of paper anyway. And you'd be wet in the rain, so don't worry about that.
You know what it is, right? Normally we have this guy that comes in the chat, like every time we go live, and he talks about something called Coach Pad. And I looked online on it. And it's basically just for taking data down, and it's a pad that you can write on in the rain. And it looked unbelievable. I was going to buy it until I realised it was $1,000. I was like, nah, grand.
So when we're talking about tagging data and obviously tagging the film, so when we start to watch the film, we've captured the film, which is great. Obviously, a couple of angles. Rich, I'm assuming you probably have more than two angles, which you're used to using from. Is that right?
Yeah, so home game, we're going to have at least 3, sometimes 4. And then practice is different. Practice, you're running 6 to 8 cameras. So you have a lot of angles going to practice. But game, typically 3. The common exchange in the US is to exchange 2. So 1 end zone and 1 sideline. And you have to have that, sent to your opponents 2 hours after returning to campus, or 2 hours after the completion of your game, along with a basic data set. So, time is of the essence when you're playing. You're trying to get stuff done quickly.
Right. Okay.
Time for your battery to die on your laptop, then, is it?
Question, if it's all right. Are you tagging clips during the game in real time?
No. You're not supposed to have access to the video in the game as a coach, and so we don't. And because of that, there's no motivation to necessarily be in there typing on it. It just creates an ambiguity of I'm doing data entry, but I have access to the video, so it's really off limits.
That makes
I
sense.
love how in practice you're going to have 6 cameras when most Britball teams won't even have that many O linemen at practice.
That's a fair point. It's a really fair point. Jamie, so when you set about tagging, so obviously, is there a timeline that does it have to be fresh in your memory? So you finish on a Sunday game, for example. Do you then tag that evening? How does it work for you in your process?
When I've got time. So, I mean, I guess that's when you, depending on what you want to achieve, like we usually do ODK pretty quickly right afterwards to try and split that up. And then it's usually up to defensive coaches to tag the defensive side, offensive coaches to tag the offensive side. But I think a lot of the difficulty, and I suppose this is where I'm going to be like the captain negative on the call, is that it can be really difficult to get enough time to get enough information in. So if, for example, we finish the game, we're obviously based up in Scotland, so we, especially when I played, it used to be games down like Coventry or wherever. So by the time you actually get back, it's 1 a.m. and then the following day you go to work. And then on the Monday night, if you can really be up for it, you're already well over 24 hours after the actual game, and that's you getting your first opportunity to do it. So I would say the biggest challenge is actually exactly that. It's been able to get the combination of the data or the information in quickly and get ready for the next practice, which might only be on the Thursday, perhaps sooner, depending on the time of year. And then making sure that you get a rich amount of data in. So it's not necessarily just about tagging what our offense did, but also tagging what look we were getting. And it's really frustrating when you go up against a team that actually has like a little something about their scheme, because then it's not just as easy. Some teams you can just like fire 34 cover 2 and then copy paste the whole way down. But unfortunately, that tends to be the big challenge, is you end up dealing with variants, and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you could probably do without having to go through every play, for example? The only reason I ask this is because coaching at under 16s, under 19s, and university, that's my weekend gone. So I try to cheat my way through this. So I look at first downs, third downs, and fourth downs. That's all I look. So I'll completely just blank out second downs, completely out of anything I look. I'll just skip it. And that's
for
just
Adam's opponents.
honestly, if you're watching and we play against Jews ever, try someone on second down. I will applaud you.
It's something, and I'm perhaps being quite presumptuous here, like something that I sort of said in the chat just before we came on, is like I have a total jealousy around Rich's position, where it's a level of professionalism well beyond what we are perhaps capable of getting, and therefore even talking about having a server just for this stuff. But when you look at things like being able to get someone to actually go through and tag the film, that being someone's job makes it immeasurably easier. So if I was talking about Britball, because that's presumably we don't have like the director of football at Alabama sitting watching this trying to figure out how he can improve his analytics. So if I was talking about Britball,
he popped on LinkedIn the other day, so he might be right. So
I would really strongly recommend that people try and distribute that work. Like, so throughout your club, you'll have, even if it's down to players, you get veteran players who are more than willing to get in and tag the plays that are in there. Almost treat it as a bit of a reward. Like, if you want to see the film early, you have to be one of the guys that does the tagging and get guys going that way. There's plenty of guys who will want access to the film quickly and will throw some data in for you and result for that. So that'd be, I think that's going to be one of the big things when we're talking about this. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with data, but you kind of need people to actively be helping you, because if you're one guy like Adam's talking about, you've got 3 teams that you coach and you're having to put in all that data. Nah,
I'll tell you,
no point living, mate.
One of the things we've had success with over the last year is, even here, like, Akron is, you said Alabama, but, I may do the job of 6 people at Alabama. So we hire students and we train them how to do some of the basic stuff. So on the way back from games, like, they'll be with us, they'll film the game, and then they're riding in the bus or the van and they're typing in it's 1st and 10. So when we get back, they've already put all that data in for both sides of the ball. So like, we go in, push it to our server. It's the same thing as putting it into a spreadsheet. If if you can watch it on the computer, you can make sure you can match everything up. But these are 18, 18-year-old kids, like, that some often haven't played high school football, that we're able to train up to do this. So I think, your youth players, anybody around could do it. And if you give them a small chunk and you're very concise with what you need, I think you'd be surprised at what you can get out of people that way.
And what Rich just
if I just send some film across, Rich, you're just able to get the domain as well.
No doubt.
Send it. Our seasons don't match, so that's ideal.
Oh, perfect.
I was going to ask you, Rich, what kind of things are you looking for there? What, like, jump out things are you looking for? Are you just tracking down the distance? What is it the type of, what are you looking for in there? What are the key bits of data straight away?
The initial things just that are going in are just the stuff we have to give to our opponents. But it's going to be what series number it is, how many plays are in that series, how that series ended, down, distance, gain, field position, pass result, like just the basic descriptors of the game, like what phase of special teams it is. The interesting thing here is when we exchange, we don't exchange a whole game like opening, kickoff, on. What you get is 3 cut-ups. One is the offensive game, one is the defensive game, and one is special teams, which is ordered not in game order, but in kick type. So it's like all the kickoffs, all the kickoff returns, all the punts. So it's a little different that way. So you're just trying to tag all that and then send it out. And then after that, then there's probably 30 to 40 data points for each side of the ball that will go in kind of over the next 6 to 8 hours.
Okay. And Will, I'm going to bring you in here because you're doing this, I think, currently for your team. Have you got any tips for anyone who's tagging that data in terms of how to do that quickly?
Yeah, so my process personally, we're finally getting to the point where we've got enough eyes who've been in the scheme that we can begin to hand out a little bit of the workload. But for the first 2 years, I only do the offensive stuff. Our DC does the defensive stuff. So we just have coordinators. That's one of your responsibilities. You're expected to tag the film. We're an amateur program. We know that. It's part and parcel of the job. Whenever we finish a game, on the journey home, when I get home, will write down what I thought of how the game went, what went well, what went badly. And then personally, I won't watch the film until Tuesday evening. And then I'll just do all the tagging at that point so I can compare it against the notes to see how subjective the game was compared to myself, what I actually thought it was. And then we would aim to distribute the film on a Wednesday. The biggest thing is, especially if you want to distribute the workload, which is something I would very much like to do this year, is training up the guys around you to be seeing the same things you are and using the same terminology you are. Fortunately, we're going into our 3rd year running the same scheme, so we've now got to the point where all of our coaches and our players are actually beginning to speak the same language, which hopefully should make it a little bit easier. But in terms of actually tagging the film up, especially if you want to distribute it, for me, one of the biggest things has got to be just making sure you're all using the same language to describe the same things, so that we've not got the, hey, play 29, you've used ban. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And try to avoid that, just so we can all be working off and editing the same data set.
But I mean, and from you all, anyone's perspective here, Rich, yours might be slightly elevated. What time frame are we looking here to put in to tag that? How long is that going to take for somebody to, let's say you've got somebody trained up, I've got an 18-year-old, it's my first hire as a head coach, because my personal opinion, if I ever get a head coach job, before I get any coordinators, I'm going to get someone to do data. That's how much I put a value on it. So I would rather have somebody just doing data than having a DC and an OC, just personally, because you can. What's the point in having them if you're not giving them the right information, right? If you can't give them the right information to do the job, then they're failing on the job. But that's my personal opinion. So how much time frame are you spending on that? Like, what's that? Is that 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? Is it 10 hours? Realistically, you're just watching through the film, to capture those key bits of information to literally tag the data that's in it.
So for me, Mike, what we will do, again, it kind of goes back. The guys have touched on this, and if you don't have the people to do this, you're struggling. So we're very lucky. For instance, we've got 2 film guys, and then again, if you think about other teams, quite often they'll just hand the camera to anybody that's injured on the day of a game, and therefore footage is often terrible on the back of that. But our film guys will get that footage up Sunday night. I'll ODK it Monday morning, and the coordinators will start tagging all of the plays so that we will have footage ready for a Wednesday night practice. So that before we take the field, we usually have an hour film session before Wednesday night practice. So that's the sort of quick turnaround that I expect, but I couldn't do it unless my guys were able to do it. And I'll take care of the special teams at that point. Get the coordinators to do the O&D stuff. If they're struggling, I'll often jump in and do it if we're needed. But that's talking about you're using your lunch hour, you're bunking off an hour or so of work here and there in order to try and start tagging the film up.
Right. So just in terms of that cold time, I'm trying to drill down and answer it. What's that going to take somebody to spend that time to do?
If it was one person,
hours is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's probably about 5 hours.
Yeah, I would say 5. It's a long time, especially if you want to get rich data. Like if you are happy just having the play fired in there, then maybe you blast through it in 2. But
yeah,
if you want to have anything of use,
or just leave out second downs, cut down half the time. There you go.
I mean, I don't know about your. This comes back to your maths. If there's 4 downs and you're taking out second down, that's a quarter of the time.
I was going to say.
Punt. No,
so I'll tell you a true story. Like many years ago, and Rich will appreciate this one. Like many years ago, I did a GA job out in the States when we had old VHS tapes. All right, and you had to. So there was none of this huddle stuff. We had pen and paper, and you had to note it down, and you were just forwarding, rewinding, clicking the tape, recording clips manually of the video, and I mean, you would be there from, that was 6 in the evening, you'd work through 2 in the morning easy, just for one side of the ball. And I mean, at that point, I had my epiphany in performance analysis, which was just sitting there at 2 in the morning going, well, if I know that they know that we know that they know what we're knowing, why am I even doing this? Who just threw the ball?
Yeah,
it's a wise tactic.
Well, the last time I ever threw a ball, and only 3 bad things happen, right?
The 2 different parts, like one, the raw data entry, like it. I think what you have to do is ask yourself the question: what do we want to get out of the data first, and then work back and say, okay, what's the least amount of data we can put in to get this information out? So I think sometimes what happens is people put in a lot of data that isn't useful. So like I'll give you a huddle example. Like huddle, at least when I used it a few years ago, you'd have to put in like play results. So if it was a run, you had to put in rush for it to calculate stats. And so you'd be putting in like this column of data. Well, we got here and we're like, hey, let's just put in pass result, because if it's empty, it has to be a run. And so then we were able to eliminate one whole column of data. So I think if you know what you're trying to get out, you can minimize what you're putting in to get that information. And so we always have a running spreadsheet of what data we're going to put in, who's responsible for it, and then what we're trying to get out of it. And if I can ever eliminate data, then I will. And that can change week to week based on your opponent. But I think that can make it the most efficient process for you in terms of having limited resources.
That's right. You don't need to fill in every column in huddle. You pick your columns.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what that was actually going to be my next question. You brought it up. We're on the same wavelength. Us data guys, Rich, we get it. It's what do you guys look to get out of your analytics? What's that? What are the, like 3 or 4 key things? What are those objectives? I would say from the data. What's the key things? I don't know how many times I can ask that question without somebody just interrupting me. We'll go to Will.
For me, 3. What am I good at? What are my opponents bad at? And what are they going to do before they do it? And if you can answer those 3 questions, usually you've got the foundation of your game plan. And anything else over the top of that, for the most part, is potentially superfluous.
J-Moss, I'm assuming, how many times did he impress coverage?
Be 2 seconds. I'm just going to Google what that word meant.
Yeah.
2 seconds.
I did.
It means not needed, bro.
Cheers. Thank you.
So, Will sort of covered it. I think you've also got to think about context. So, like most of your film, or certainly a massive chunk of it, is going to be practice. So, you've also got to think of what you can get from practice. And I think Rich made a really good point, and it's a point that's like true all over data in any sphere, which is that you've got to start with the end in mind. You can't go out there and just capture everything. Well, you can, but it will be messy and you'll never achieve anything. So you've got to start with the end in mind. In practice, we usually try to see not only what we're good at, but you can also figure out what certain players are good at based on a bunch of factors. And then you can drive into a game. I'm perhaps going to be a bit, again, negative here, but I actually don't think a lot of the ultra advanced analytics are all that useful for prediction in games. In particular in Britball, largely because it might be 3 different play callers across the course of a season. So, whether it's actually right or not changes from game to game, never mind throughout the course of the season. But on top of that, there are only so many times like an opponent's going to be in, 4th and short or 4th and long, or 3rd and short, 3rd and long. Just a simple, what do they run most? And you can feed that to guys and let them know that when they get into pressure situations, we did it against, when I say it was Lancashire in a pre-season game, we had a game down there, and one thing that they did universally was when it got to 3rd and 4th and short, the quarterback was running. It was like an absolute given. And you can call that out from the sideline. And I think anything beyond that, the juice is no longer worth the squeeze at this level. I don't know necessarily that there's, when you start to go up and you can get the same coordinators film from like 12 seasons back in the NFL. I'm sure there's plenty of things that you could do predictably. I think there's also rules on both sides being able to have the same information and stuff like that during the game. But I would say that you just need some basic stuff. You need to know what you're good at. We do that in practice. And then in a game, if you really need something extra, you can just aggregate what other teams do quite a lot.
I mean, if I've learned anything from this already, is every single week in my data meeting, I'm going to lead with one question: what's the end goal? There's no.
It really is. It really is. If you have that, then that's you get what you want to achieve from it, or you realise that what you want to achieve is mindlessly difficult, and has some massive blocker, like for example, you need to put in more data than you could ever hope to get in which case you'll review.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of like using film and using analysis, but there's multiple things you can use it for. So for instance, you can analyze the technique of your own players, and we usually would do that in a practice session, sort of correcting skills and allowing them to get that visual cue that they need to actually make improvements. You can also look at work rates, which is something you tend to see more in soccer, with the catapult systems. But actually watching video with your team, it sort of creates a no hiding place type of atmosphere. If they're watching film and you can see a player slacking off, the rest of the players will get on their back about it.
Yeah, two things in life have never told a lie. Shakira's hips on film. That's a fact.
So but if you're getting filmed, it does increase your work rate, and it does mean that you work harder. And then obviously we use it for our own post-mortems, looking at our games, and we use it for scouting opponents. And within those, we're looking at tendencies. We're looking at tactical. So for me, formations is usually the thing with my defensive hat on. I'm looking at the formations first, so that it's not a surprise from the defensive players, and then we look at what the plays are, because usually they're only running 4 plays from about 20 formations. What would it be in Britball? Okay, the formations tend to be wide and varied, and then the plays are just pretty basic. But for me, that like the biggest giveaway, special teams. If you watch an opponent's special teams, you'll learn really quickly what they like to do. If they have a tendency to punt, if they got a trick play in there that you've caught, 3 games back, you know that your guys are prepped for it and they're ready to go.
Here's
you can
one
see
for
the
you,
weaknesses in return games.
I'm gonna give you this one now. For anyone that we play against, we don't punt and we don't kick the ball long on kickoff. We onside kick every time. So that's one for everyone. You don't need to put that in your column against us, boys. There you go.
I mean, this feels like more of a deep dive into Adam's philosophy.
Adam,
I'll generate everything now, and then I'll ask people that we play against just to give me notes now. That's how it works.
So weirdly enough, Adam brings up a really interesting point in terms of like functional data that you don't need any analytics skill to actually get into. In terms of who are the kind of personalities you're dealing with. So all of us engage with Facebook for the most part. A lot of us engage with Twitter. So one of the, I think, quite underutilized things that you can do in terms of analytics is studying your opponents. Like, it's fairly well known, the names of the DCs or OCs, coordinators, what have you, that you're likely to play.
Do you stalk your opponents?
Your mad stalking skills, Will.
Jamie,
I've got custom built software that will troll your Twitter for what kind of things you follow. Yeah, and you can learn tons about stuff. You can learn tons of stuff about people just from what they post online. What groups do they follow? If you put the information out there, it's out there. That's for you.
I like to call it Sherlocking.
2 seconds. I'm just going to clear my browsing history.
It's called, like, in the technical field, it's called sentiment analysis, and you can get a really good sense of how people's minds work. And this is something anybody can do. Just go out and have a look at, do they get into arguments easily? Are they aggressive? Are they passive? And that translates into your
got them on game day.
You can definitely bait people with play calls.
Yes,
you can bait people into blitzing. You can bait people passing. You can bait people into making bad calls at the wrong time, based on how their mind works.
Will going up to someone and going, "So, what's your thoughts on Brexit?" and just walking away.
You can definitely mess with people's heads.
I mean, I've
make them always wrong.
People on social media, so yeah, I feel you on that one. Rich, what's your thoughts on this?
I'm a little disturbed right now. I'm going to be analyzed.
Yeah, you should get off. We should all post less on social media.
I think.
Stop, baby.
It means he knows that you had KFC last Tuesday, Jamie.
No, I'm kind of playing with you guys for a little bit, but you can do that stuff.
No, I mean, it's fair because I mean, I work in my job. We work in marketing, and we call it toilet time, and not in a weird way, but that's when most people scroll. Well, yeah, it is a weird way. So we use it as a phrase to capture. How can I grab your attention on your social media feed while you sat on the toilet? It's the same thing, and that's all based on your interactions on social media.
It's exactly the same thing, but just repurposed.
So, and by the way, yes, it's true.
Microphone. Where are we tying this in with getting good at running stick?
How can you tell what I'm going to run on 3rd and 2 by what I've been looking at on Twitter? What?
You'd be definitely. I'll go on the record and say this. You would be 100% better going to all the 3rd and 2s and then grouping them all up by what they ran, and then checking the top 3 and that, and just defending those.
Do both. Every edge. Every edge you can get.
I see always nan bread with these mid.
You spend so much time doing that you don't coach. It's like a billion things you could do that are like.
You can spend 10 minutes looking up an opposing coaching staff and learn a ton about them.
Yeah,
that's the best comment ever. What?
I don't disagree.
I don't need any software. I've already worked out how to wind Will up. Tell him your favorite Star Wars character is Spock. Will, find him on Facebook now. Tell us what he doesn't like because we play him. Tell him. Get him, Will.
That would be ethically questionable behavior.
Adam's gubbed already. If he plays him, he's just admitted he doesn't care if it's second down and told him what he's going to run whenever he...
No, honestly, ask any team that we play. I do not care. Like last season, I told a team that what we were going to run. They don't believe you.
Did it work?
I can tell a team what I'm going to run. They don't believe you.
But to be fair, we used to call it at the line. We used to call it at the line, and as long as you're like scheme sound, you can get away with that running the option.
Jamie,
just call it at the line. You know what the play is, and you win anyway.
It gated last season. We done it with you, where I lined up wearing a 60 number receiver, and I had a guy come over and mark us. And then one of your guys started shouting.
What number came over?
Honestly, guy with the long hair.
Which number was it? Because I'll go question him.
The one with the long hair, the linebacker, started mouthing off, giving us abuse, saying, "Great effort play, number 66." I went, "Mate, I can't move off the line." I was like, "What do you want to do?"
He's such a wind-up merchant. He's a good boy.
He was like, "Great effort play." I was like, "You've just two guys are coming off that one. I can't move."
Yeah, back to analytics. Yeah.
Back in the world of analytics, I'm just looking at that comment there, Mike. Looking at other teams' highlights. Well, you know, that's an interesting point because actually we've still got coaches out there that won't share film, which I find is absolutely bonkers. Because
I agree.
You know, why are they guarding this film like it's going to, be the secrets to how we beat you? You actually make your team better by sharing your highlights with another team. By sharing everything, you share your game film with another coach, and they send good film back. And you prepare your team to know what they're good at, and they prepare you for what you're good at, and actually, performance level goes up. So if there's any coaches out there who are not sharing film, get a grip. You're holding your team back. There, preach.
Agreed.
No, but I think, to be fair, what Will kind of alluded to and touching on is probably what does happen in, what Rich will see is based on the tendencies, based on the profile of the coach, right? So, obviously that the profile of that coach will dictate certain amount of tendencies. We can see it in the NFL. There's certain coaches, by the profile of that person, what type of scheme and operants they're going to run by the basic. And fundamentally, the fact that we use analytics in this call is based on the fact that we've got 4 people on the call who all do this for a living. So your tendencies are based on who you are as people as well, if that makes sense. So
every coach is like a musician, has a series of influences on them through their life that kind of molds, what you do as a coach. The plays you run, the formations you're in, go back to, some coach you worked for that did that, and they drill it into you that it always works, and you just carry that on with you, some variation of. So that is a part of our process, is to understand, what the influences are on these coaches, what they're, you're trying to get away from the X's and O's, but understand philosophically what they are about, and so you're trying to describe them, from that point of view.
Because I think in that sense,
did Rich just say I'm not crazy?
I think in a very
no, I'll get it on. That's nah. But
this is a good question came in from Phoebe, Rich and all really. What quick fixes would you give to those in Britballin to help them out of analytics and film? We'll start with Rich.
I would mandate that all films are exchanged. I would mandate that all films are exchanged with down, distance, field position, and gain, as well as ODK. So that, because if you're putting it in for your team, then send it to the other team and they'll send you the same thing back. And then you saved each other a lot of time. The more you could make a constant flow of data and video between everybody, the better the quality of the product's going to be, and the more time you're going to save each other. So I think that would help everybody.
And I think what a great point there, Rich, is it's a mindset change, isn't it? We have to have a certain level of BAFA level coaches. We have to have a certain level of X. These things are mandated day to day. And I think we often talk about the game getting better in Britain. Well, it always starts for me coming back to making sure we've got high quality film of each team and every game. And then a community of best practice where we share that within each other and make sure, because if I share data, my film, then I'm getting better by watching your film and vice versa. I don't, like you said, that closed off mindset of, oh, you don't have my film. And then both of us have got worse by doing that.
Well, if you have limited time and you get 2 games come across from an opponent and it has down and distance in there, and you can go, all right, give me all the defensive 3rd and 1, boom, okay. Let's have a quick look at that 3rd and 2 to 3. You can start getting into them like within an hour. You can start having an idea of what they're about. But if you get just a blank game, or you don't get a game and you're trying to watch something on YouTube, then it's just frustrating. So just if people are filming it and people are putting it in for themselves, then give it to your opponent and they'll give it back to you. I think that would make things way easier.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, genuinely, hand on heart, if I ever did get, when I move into coaching, my first hire will be a film guy, my second hire will be a data guy, and then I'll work out coordinators and stuff from that point, because that's how pivotal I believe it is. I think when you look at it like that, data doesn't lie, does it? You can get rid of all. But obviously, I take Jamie's point. There's an element of if they don't know what they're doing, how the bloody hell is your data meant to know what they're doing? But as I said, putting the importance onto it, I think it can make you a better team by doing so.
Yeah, no. So it's not to say that. I mean, like having all that stuff's fine, and I think Phoebe's comment raised a really good point, which is, I think we just have to think about everything starts with minimum standards. So let's just talk about when you share film, and I'll call it Bryce Stevenson when he was up at Aberdeen back in 2019, back when we used to actually go out and play. He sent on like all of his film, and a lot of it was ODK'd, and he was like so forward with it, and we were like reciprocal with that, and that was like a really good kind of positive thing that was going on, and it makes everything so much easier. And the games like against Aberdeen, it's so much better because you can actually go into it with like an idea of like, right, here's what we want to try and achieve, and they come into an idea of what they wanted to achieve. And all of that stuff helps you become better at what you're trying to, or what you're doing. And it's just, that's the bit I think that I'd want to get across, is that we can talk, you can talk about all these crazy techniques that are going in AI. And I've read articles last season with the Liverpool squad and how their analytics department can follow the players around the pitch and solve all the data is generated for them. That's amazing. But it's absolutely not applicable to Britball. Like it's just not. So what we really need is we need everyone to be getting really good quality film. I would add in that you need to be able to see players' numbers so that you actually can identify what's going on in the film. That's probably a clarity thing. And then from there, like just at the very least, note down what play you had and how successful it was, and you'll start to see things that are like you never knew before. For example, there'll be plays that you just suck at. And you never really think you suck at it because you maybe quite like the play, but the reality is you gain 2 yards of carry or whatever it was, and that sucks. So you can start to build from there.
I think that was great when we had Coach Kevin Kelly on the show, and he said, look, I used to run this play, and at one time I'd hit on it every 5 or 6 plays, and it'd be a 28-yard play, 30-yard play, but I'd only ever remember that one. After the game, we'd all go on the bus and we'd all talk about that one play, yet we've run it 15 times to no avail. 14 times it's been a bust player sack, we've lost yards. And until you put data down on that, like Harry talked last night about the Mersey Miracle, and we laughed about it. However, they might have run 4 other times that game, but they're only going to remember that one play.
They ran it about 12 times that game because I remember it, and they did nothing but 4 verts like the entire time.
Yeah, well,
it's amazing.
It's the ability to sort of self-scout is one of the things that tends to go when you're up against the time. So, if I've got 2 games, back to back, I don't have enough time to review the game that's just gone. I'll spend more of my time, scouting the opponent coming up so that I'm ready for midweek practice. So, ideally, if you have that time, that allows you to do that self-scout and, sort of analyze yourself, look at yourself through an opponent's eyes to see what you're doing well and what you're not doing so good.
Yeah, I think that's a good point from Phoebe there. She's getting real hang of watching the show. It's all about plugs on this show. If you're not plugging, you're not trying hard enough. So hopefully we'll see some good stuff from Bafka. Pete, no pressure. So the next question I had really was for all of you. But if you could start again within the British game, or start again, what importance would you guys, and this might be a biased one, have on the importance of analytics? Do you agree with that philosophy of it should be the first thing implemented, or do we believe there is more of a process where it should be an OC, a DC, that kind of thing. Where do you put that on the hierarchy of level of importance?
I mean, if you were to go, if you're talking about restarting the British game, there's an awful lot of things that you should probably sort before the data. But if we are, if you're picking up on, I think all comes in with. This is so outside it, but I think it comes in like minimum standards. So like teams should be filming games. Teams should be at various levels, setting up youth and junior setups, and maybe as Rich says, you get some of those guys to help with your tagging, and just things should be set up in a more sustainable fashion. Data could be part of that. Although I would say that the film is the most important bit. What teams do with the film is probably up to them, but as long as you've got minimum standards set that you have to ODK it before you send it across as an absolute bare minimum, and then after a couple of years maybe you would set it up so you actually have to add in down and distance information and stuff like that. You could add it in. I think that comes with a lot of other stuff though. I would happily forgo that end of things if we were to
I'll switch the question up. I'll switch the question up a little bit and go to Rich. So you guys have had this embedded for a long time. Have you got any like kind of nuggets of success where you could say this has made it worthwhile when you do your review? This has been a success because of X, Y, and Z. This changed this game. Do you guys see that regularly based on the data that you're presenting to your players?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with analytics is it starts permeating every aspect of your program. Any decision you make, you can weigh up the pros and cons and collect data for. But there's definitely been games where we've made certain play calls based off of things that we knew before. We've, remember one year specifically changing my run pass ratio as a play caller in the red zone based off of some studies of some other teams and moving it from 70-30 pass to run to flipping it and being 70% run. And that had a huge benefit for us with our schedule. But I think there is benefit to it. I think, going back to your previous question, like its importance in British football, I think is to understand that, why good video exists, and then trying to educate your players as to, why you're watching it. What are you looking for? Like, don't just sit there and watch it like a movie. Like, be critical and be able to evaluate, was this a good play for me or a bad play? And if you can start teaching people how to do that, and you're a 19-year-old kid, and part of you being taught the game is to understand how to watch video and critique yourself, I think that's a significant skill that often gets left out. And I have to talk to our players here about it. Like, they don't get taught that in high school sometimes. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think you should definitely video, and the more you use it and the more people feel the benefit of it, then I think you'll then start filming other angles and producing more with it, but it has to start somewhere.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And Will, I'm going to pass over to you now. And do you mind talking us through, if I share my screen, your Power BI, so that kind of next level you've created?
Yeah, can do. So Rick touched off an interesting line of thought there, and that is, why are we doing what we're doing? And that, for me, is the real power of analytics. As coaches, why are we doing what we're doing, and what could we be doing better as one of the key benefits that analytics can offer? And this piece of software you're about to share, this goes into basically, if you've got a person on a ladder filming down on a pitch, you can get enough information to do this if you just bung it through Huddle or even just run it off a spreadsheet or a pen and paper. All we've done here is basically turn it into something that makes it easy to engage with. Not everybody, unfortunately, is hugely happy spending days in front of a spreadsheet. So you want to move to, in terms of your analytics, you want to move towards an environment where you're not focused so much on the actual data. You're focused on what does that data tell us. If you wouldn't mind, jump into either page and we can have a look and explain that a little bit further. So this is being rolled out to, at the very least, our junior and senior team this year, to our coaching staffs. So this will be powered by just extracts from Huddle and Quick Cut the more they fill it out, the more information we can get from it. So we have in this example, if we do a little bit of self scout, go to just select cheaters. Let's have a look at what we ran on first down across this game. Okay, so everywhere highlighted in yellow, we ran plays from that area of the field. Just select one. Maybe have a look at the red zone. So it goes, you read it left to right. Red zone, we ran one play from that location. What was it? How did it do? Okay, we gained 13 yards on that, but we didn't score. If we go back out, could we take first down off, please? And could we have a look? There's a thing on there on the left called play type. One box down. Play type. Where did we score from? So the third box down, play result. So there's explosive play, normal play, touchdown, turnover. All right, where did we score from in this game? All right, we scored from those locations. What can we learn from that? Well, from the look of it, fortunately, we seem to be scoring with both run and pass. However, we're not gaining many yards when we run the ball if we do score. So we only really seem to be running from that one particular area of the field, right hash going in. And from the look of it, every time we were in that location, we ran the same play. So if I'm now knowing that about myself, I can turn around and say, hey, if I'm an opposing DC and I've watched this film, if they get into that location on the field, they really like that play. We can prep that. And I, as a play caller, can go back and say, hey, I maybe need to not do that or find another option for myself, because I seem to be going back to this same thing quite consistently. Additionally, we can go in and find out what formations do we like, where do we like to run the ball, where do we like to pass the ball, and then you can begin to change your own tendencies to make yourself a little bit less predictable. If we could go, just click the cheater logo on the top right. So this is one I'm a little bit more familiar with the data in, because this is the one I would tend to look at. If we go into defensive tendencies, so this is what I would use to prep for a game, so an opponent for a game. So I would just select my opponent, and then I can go through down and distance based on the scout film we have of them on different areas of the film. Where was their defense on the field versus the first down? Where were they versus second down, third down, fourth down? What formations did they run in those looks? Are there specific areas of the field where they like to change it up? So there's a little pie chart on the top called defensive formation utilization. So this basically is our breakdown of what formation they're actually showing us in different areas of the field. Can we click 52 bear on that? So that's the yellow, I think. So just you can use the pie chart. Okay, so 52 bear in second down. If we take the downs off, brilliant. Okay, so this team, from the look of it, they only go into 52 bear once you're going from the 20 in. That's fantastically powerful information for me as a play caller, which through tools like this makes it a little bit easier to engage and understand where the pattern spot. But you can do this with an Excel sheet and just drilling down and stuff. And just looking for the patterns. But the goal for us really is, now we've got to the stage where we can produce rich enough data to begin gaining these sorts of insights. How can we get it to the point where all of our coaches and players can begin to engage with it and spot patterns? I mean, you can just play with this around on screen. It does all kinds of interesting things. It will tell us where on the field they like to run certain blitz packages, where they like to change their coverage, what looks they'll show versus certain plays. These are all insights which, as a play caller, on either side of the ball, can make you very, very difficult to deal with. The goal primarily being
like a play card for you to take to the next game, sort of thing.
Yeah, so this would be run. If I was looking at this for an opposing defense, I would ideally get my hands on as much film as I possibly can. Bang it through Huddle or Quick Cut, tag up the 7 categories that I actually find interesting and useful, which will take me 45 minutes to an hour while I'm watching the film, maybe an hour and a half. And then just extract it and run it through this. And then I'll just go in and look for patterns. play calling to a large extent, especially in a competitive environment, is about spotting patterns in what your opposition do. Now, a lot of us do this subconsciously. You get that gut feeling when you call a player. I've got a really good feeling that this is the right thing to do in this situation. And sometimes you're right and sometimes you're not. What analytics can allow you to do, if used correctly, is give you the data and the information to make those decisions in a more informed fashion. Probably the best example of my career from this is the first final I ever play called in, which was a Div 2 final. And we played that team twice that year, and we had about 4 or 5 games of them. And we realized that if we got them on the left hash on about R30, they sent the same linebacker every single time. And so we installed a play for that. We got our guys down on a Friday evening, 2 days before the game, and we installed one play based on that. And then told our STC, if we get the ball on kickoff or anytime they kick, put us here, and it will be money. And opening play of that final, 65 yards and one very confused linebacker later, touchdown. And these are the sorts of things that you can gain from this, is you can produce big plays at unexpected times. And that's fantastically powerful. And if anybody would like to have a look at this, you can share that link around. There's none of my actual... There's none of our actual tendency data in there. That's just some dummy data for showing it to our own coaching staff. So if anybody would be interested in having a look at that in detail, feel free to request it. Quite happy for that to go out. But the goal really is just to get people thinking about, all right, I'm going through and I'm tagging all this film up. What can I actually gain from it? That for me is the big thing that I think more people could benefit from in terms of analytics, is understanding how can this benefit you. How can this make you a better coach or a better play caller? For me, particularly, it focuses around play calling. That's where a lot of my interest lies, but there's 1,001 different areas you can touch upon with this. Getting your own players more engaged in terms of giving them dashboards that record their own game stats, helping your coaching staff grade players and interact with that kind of information to help determine who's going to start. We even at one point had a look at putting together some information just to record who could do what basic skills well, who can shed a block, who can catch. And then you can begin to plan your training around that. All right, we identified we have one unit that is awful at this one skill. We need to put extra time into that. There's loads of ways you can. I
suppose one of the things
use this sort of thing.
As Jamie's mentioned, though, you can potentially go too far with that, can't you, in terms of the British game? And that's fantastic, and I think everyone would love to have that. But I think sometimes, straight away there, like I said, from that data, it probably would have took someone a lot.
So we're 3 years into this project, and if it were me going back to day one, the number one thing you need before you do any advanced analytics is somebody with a camera, or either on some scaffolding or a ladder, and you get some raised film and you just start breaking that down on a pen and paper. And then just go from there. Grow it in whatever way.
Laughing at me with a pen and paper before.
Start where you need to. Like, there's no reason that anybody, regardless of their skill set, shouldn't be able to begin to gain some insights from film. Like, we'll watch film, for the most part, I would imagine, maybe not the tagging it, but the actual watching film is something that most coaches enjoy, or at least a decent chunk of them. You can learn a lot from film about yourself and your opponents, and that's where you start. If you want to then go out and build stuff on top of that, that's fantastic, but you don't need to. All you need to do is just get some film that's actually watchable. Then go from there.
Yeah, brilliant. And Rich, obviously you'll be using stuff similar to that at the moment. Is there anything you could give in terms of advice in order to get something like that set up quickly, or do you know of any software that'll help support that and that might not be as labor intensive or anything like that?
We got a feature in our software that enables you to kind of manipulate and produce reports, and it's not dissimilar to Huddle's report tool, where you can start adding columns and subdividing and doing things, and that to me has a lot of power in it. Like, the closer to the ball being snapped, the more information you have. So the earlier in the time before the ball being snapped that you can give your players some useful information, is kind of paramount. Now, the thing you don't want to do is create just a system overload for anybody where you have an ungodly amount of data that you're like, hey, remember in 2nd and 2 in this formation on this hash, they're going to do like that. That's not good for anybody. But if you can find a couple of different situations where you can make an educated decision, or really just know that your opponent's weak or strong in a certain area, then that can kind of help you. And you know, one of the parts I got to work this in is getting some really quality help. So with everything going virtual this last year, we actually had some people remotely help us with some data stuff last season. So shout out to Rory if you're. I got to make sure I give you some love because he nailed it. Like every week we would send him film through the cloud, and he'd go on and have his data points and turn it around, and then we'd incorporate that into our scouting report. So it's taking help wherever you can find it. Just shout out to Rory if you're watching.
I'm sure if anyone's watching and they really like data and they want to tag up for Akron, I'm assuming Rich will always take some free work, won't you?
That was always a plan. It was always a plan. He'd come onto the data call and advertise the fact that he needs people to come on and do his reports.
Or if you want to keep it more local and you want to make me a spreadsheet on Excel.
I tell you what, Adam, you'll like this. So one of the things that we do to assist with post-game tagging, so the next day stuff, is that one of my coaches, who I believe is watching tonight, I'll say hello to him. Hi, James. He's the clipboard guy, right? So he will stand next to both of our coordinators and just log down in distance and the play call and result of the play. And then when we go to tag up the next day, both our coordinators have copies of that sheet, and it makes their jobs a lot easier because they already know what the call was. They're not guessing, not having to watch the film. They're just inputting the instructions into it. Now, even if you don't have huddle, that information in itself is enough to sit down and analyze and look at your tendencies and look at what your opponents are doing. So it gives you something even if you've not got great film.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And before we shoot, I'm going to ask you all to share kind of one top tip that you would potentially give to anyone looking to start out in this, and they've got let's say take me for example. I want to get into analytics when I start coaching. Where do I start? What's your top tip that I could potentially get from you guys in order to help me? But not me, everyone else really watching. And we'll go to Rich. We'll leave you last. Adam, you're not getting asked this question. We'll start.
Pen and paper.
J-Box, we'll let you go first. I've not heard your lovely voice for a while.
That's a rarity, isn't it? So yeah, if I was to say one thing, it would just keep it simple. So get good film. That's absolutely the priority. And if you've got the capability, get whoever within your club is keen to help you out with this. And get everybody to help fill in the information about that play. You can go to whatever level of depth you want. It probably depends on how many guys you have, but get them doing that, and then just see what you're good at. And that's where to start. I know, heaps of teams in the UK don't even fill their games, so that's where you have to start. Is do that at the very least.
Yeah, brilliant. And Will?
For the most part, I agree. I think keep it simple to begin with and build from there. If and where you need to, that's the best advice. That and do anything you possibly can to get some film from a raised camera angle. And then, there is undoubtedly a risk of information overload. I'm probably a good example of somebody. I've been building the system for 3 years, and we've jumped straight into it. All we started out was. What we started with is exactly what Pete said, which is we had our quarterback two with a clipboard on the sideline, and he would write down the distance, the play call, and the defensive book, which helped educate our quarterbacks in terms of what they were looking at, and gave us enough to go away and come back to the next time we play that team that year and say, hey, we think we like this versus this. That's enough for 98, 99% of the stuff we like.
And taking even away from pen and paper, a lot of people have got iPads and phones now, and I know Adam doesn't like it, but you can get Excel open on your phone and just put this in straightforward, and you just be typing it in, can't
you can do. I almost prefer the pen and paper for that, just because I don't know if I trust my quarterbacks in pads with an iPad on a sideline. But yeah, I guess the point is you don't need to go too techy on this. There is a ton of value to be achieved with a camera, a pen, and a paper, and then go from there and develop what you need.
Yeah, perfect. And Pete?
For me, as a big thing we've not talked about, which is dissemination. Like, who's actually looking at all the work that you're doing? Because as coaches, we could be, spending hours and hours breaking down this film, preparing scout reports, and then if none of your players watch the film or read the report, what's the point? You're absolutely stuck. So what you've got to make
sure... take just a little bit of disappointment there. What's the point?
So it's about, checking up on your players that they're watching the film. So Huddle allows you to see who's actually watching the clips, but players also learn how to dodge that. The guy that's watched 8.5 hours worth of film footage hasn't been watching anything, right? He's left that on.
I'll tell you what, a top tip.
Clip.
Our offensive coordinator is pretty cruel, so he'll actually put them into a YouTube video and stop it like an hour in or like 15 minutes in and ask a secret question. And then 30 minutes in, he'll ask another secret question like, what's your favourite dog's name or whatever? And then you'll have to send him them so you know that they've watched it throughout.
That's almost insane, almost as insane as well. But, it's... what I would just simply do is you give some of the tag responsibilities back to the players. You get them involved, you get them to view the film, you get them, every player has some homework, you got tag 5 plays where you found something interesting, leave a comment for the coach. One of the other things I've found, and I've got a paper coming out about this, which is that over the course of the season, players will actually watch less film as the season goes along. And if you're playing the same opponent a second time, viewing film goes way down. So if you're aware of that as a coach, it's important that you stay on top of that with the players, that you don't let them get bored with the same team. Make them, you tell them, I know it's the same opponent, but we've seen other things in the film. Go back and watch it. Do your homework this time around. So that's my big take-home message. Get them to watch it, otherwise,
you're wasting time.
A lot of wasted hours.
So keep it simple, get people to watch it, and then Rich, any top tip from you?
If you're teaching people that may not be experts, haven't done it a lot, in their lifetime, you want them to be consistent with what they do. So if they call a formation trips, every time you see that formation, call it trips. It doesn't matter if it isn't called trips, but if they're consistent and then you're able to clean it up simply, that's really important. And getting that consistency with some basic stuff to start off with and getting them the ability to practice. And then I think being very clear with what you're trying to do on the outcome, as you're starting to break things down, like what exact information do people want to know from this? Because it's a good question. If you ask your offensive and defensive coordinator, what do you need to know about our next opponent? Like my coaches here may ask me, do they go nickel sub package versus 11 personnel?
Yeah,
well, that's a very specific question, and amongst 150 questions. But your coach may ask you, are they 4-3 or 3-4? Like, so how much data do you really have to put in to determine that? So I think understanding what your coaches need, from a deliverable point of view, having great consistency with whoever's putting the data in, absolute clarity as to who has what pieces of data will give you the best possible product. Because at the end of the day, for us, where we have all these resources and all this stuff, on Sundays when we're getting ready for an opponent, I give our coaches typically 70 pages on each side of the ball. And it's 70 pages of useful information, but it's really a reference manual. So you're just, okay, what do they do on first down? Scroll through, find the first down section. but I try and summarize it down into a very small 1 hour presentation I can give them that has the core information in it, and then they can refer back to that scan report on top. You know, if I gave them 300 pages of reports, yeah, the answer's in there somewhere, but there's a lot of other bullshit in there as well. So you got to understand what your coaches want, and you got to be able to like then leverage, you know, what your people can do below you with what you're trying to produce in a timely fashion every week. And I think it's very possible to do in the British game. I mean, everyone has people around the game, whether it's retired people that, you know, want to help, that are on the sideline, you know, or, you know, the backup QB who's really eager, that may be a great coach down the road. It's with Huddle, you have the ability to have 10 or 20 people work on a game, and it can be a part of the development process. Like if I was a British head coach, I would have my youth players learning the game through that, like, because they may not get a ton of games, but I can have them in, okay, hey, label all the drops for the quarterback. If you're a youth quarterback, you should know this. And so you can start getting people to learn things whilst doing that. And the more they do it, the better they get. And then they're going to naturally have conversations for you. So I think there's a lot of little tidbits I would offer as I go off for a while. Sorry.
No, to be fair, I think we was all in all then.
Really good stuff.
No, it's really useful. Rich, thanks very much. That was I mean, I could sit and listen to you all night, so don't worry about that. No, I think just due to time, I think we'll wrap it up there. But guys, it's been really useful, and I'm hoping anyone who's been watching has at least taken some sort of kind of useful information in terms of, you know, how we use analytics and how hopefully, if they were to adopt that philosophy, how it can be used better to make them better as a team and the game. But the top thing to come out of it is keep it simple. Bloody, if you can, share film. Make sure you're capturing decent film, because other than that, we're dare I say, pissing into the wind, aren't we? With it? So until we get those things right, I think that's the way we'll go. So again, as I mentioned to you all pre-show, there we go. I always put my foot in my mouth, so don't worry about that. If any of you felt embarrassed for anything you've said, I've just said piss into the wind live on stream twice. So, well, thank you all for joining us this week. We'll wrap it up there, and we'll hopefully catch you all soon. Thanks very much. And Jamie, thanks for